cloud. Here we go. So this is author James Rosone and Alex Aaronson, and we figure we would go ahead and give a little bit of commentary to what's been going on with the war. Today is March 3rd, 2022. The war in Ukraine is on day 8. And one of the things I would like to preface with this whole operation to give a little context here, because I think unfortunately context has been missing throughout this entire war. I don't know about you, but miraculously, apparently a lot of the punditry and the generals that have been pontificating on CNN and Fox News were intricately involved in Putin's battle plan for what was going to take place in Ukraine, because they have all been talking about how the operation is falling behind schedule. So I was unaware that, reporters like Jennifer Griffin were intricately involved in the operational planning of the war, because she knows an awfully lot about his operations that apparently nobody else does. And so does a lot of the other punditry. It's quite interesting. So a little context here. When the US invaded Iraq in March of 2003, it took US forces roughly 21 days to reach Baghdad. 21 days from Kuwait to Baghdad, give or take 500 kilometers. They had no air force to fight through, very little air defense to fight through, an Iraqi army completely demoralized and really only putting up pockets of resistance. And somehow it took the American forces 21 days. And by everyone's standard, America should have done this in 24 hours, because that's the standard being applied to what's happening in Ukraine. And then when they went into Baghdad, that took 6 days to essentially capture and secure the city. Now, if we were applying 2022 standards, they should have done this in 4 hours, because that's the standard that the Fox News punditry and CNN have said is what should have happened with Russia.
Well, I think part of the problem that we're running into, and I fell for this myself, which was it's easy to forget how big Ukraine really is. If you're just looking at a map, looking at Kyiv and looking at the border with Belarus, you're like, oh yeah, you could do that in a half an hour. but it turns out, oh no, that's actually, there's actually a big chunk of distance there. So from my perspective, I know that was the one thing that really got me off guard, was what that distance really looked like. And so when you break that down, as you have, into a rate of advance, so take your distance, divide by your expected rate of advance. I think that another thing that plays into this is
logistics.
Exactly right, because that's where it looks like the wheels are really falling off the wagon for the Russians, is on the logistics side of it. So even if the advance of the actual armor and everything is moving along at a good clip, it's watching the columns bog down, run out of gas. It's did you see the bit? There was a tweet thread about a guy who basically his whole life is military tires, and he's basically pointing out that one of the problems that he
cheap Chinese tires.
Well, no, it's not even that. It's that corrupt Russian commanders haven't been running their equipment, and so the tires basically you need to keep those things moving, right? And so the idea, I think, is that Moscow calls down and says, hey, did you run the trucks? And he calls back, yeah, of course we did. Yeah, we burned 500 gallons of diesel. And in fact, he sold the diesel on the black market. And so now they're paying for that. So I don't know how much that's accurate, but it makes sense to me.
Well, and there's another thing too that a lot of people aren't considering in with all this, is that Russia's in reality invading on 4 major axes, but they're really coming across from probably about 7 or 8 different lines. So that requires a tremendous amount of trucks to support that kind of operation, fuel trucks, supply trucks, everything else like that, because you're supporting multiple different lines. So like even in Iraq, we essentially had 2 dominant axes of attack. The British broke off to the right and took Basra, while the Marines were hooking on the right side of the Tigris and Euphrates going up, while the army went up on the left-hand side. And That was a challenge for our forces with our logistic capability to make sure that that was supplied continuously. So imagine on the Russian side where you have Ukraine, you're invading from 4 different axes of attack, one coming through Crimea, there's 2 coming from the east, and then you have the one coming up from the top of Ukraine. And even that one coming from the north, it still broke down into 2 different angles that they're trying to come down on. So you're talking about a tremendous amount of vehicles to support that. And I'll pull up a map here. I've been using this live leaks map. And what's really interesting about this when we see the actual angles of attack here. So on one hand, we have Belarus up here. So they came down through through here on one axis, and then you've got the other one coming down through here. You've got the main attack coming through Kharkov right here, and then you've got the 2 breakaway provinces. Now, this is where the brunt of the Ukrainian army is. This is where the majority of the army is, and this is where a lot of the heavy fighting is taking place here. And then you have the other axis where they're coming out of Crimea, and there was a major city that they took right here. This particular city in here. Kherson was the big city. This opened up this entire avenue of attack here. Right. And it's going to allow the Russian forces to swing around back through this backside here. And then right here is another major one that they're capturing and securing. And when they get Dnipro, I believe they've already actually taken Dnipro. I don't think the map's fully updated. The problem is the bulk of the Ukrainian army at this point is surrounded. These guys are completely cut off. The Zelensky and these guys did not make the tactical move to pull their forces out and get them out because they needed this force back over here.
Right.
And when you look up here, what's happening is you've got this big long 40-kilometer convoy essentially right through here, and then there's other aspects of it in here that are kind of stuck. And everyone's talking about how they're just running out of fuel, they're stuck, blah, blah, blah. If you really look at the maps, it's not necessarily true. They're stacked in an attack formation. And what they're doing is, one, they're refueling them all and get them taken care of. That's a crap load of vehicles to get taken care of. But what they're doing is they're actually waiting for these other axes of advance from here and some of the other ones to come along here so they can support the attack with a full, true combined arms offensive. Because you don't just send a tank battalion into a city. You have to go in there with infantry, motorized infantry, and light infantry first. Then you bring in the tanks. And what they've done, though, at this point is they have Kiev almost completely surrounded and cut off at this point. When that happens, they're done. And there's no more supplies coming in. There's very little ammunition. The Russians have been popping their ammo dumps like crazy. And this army over here and the armies along here have been burning through ammo like you wouldn't believe.
Sure.
And there is no Western ammo coming in. There are no ammo supplies coming in. And the little bits that are trickling in are coming across the Romanian border, and they're coming across the Polish border on this side here. That's not much. It's not enough to support the operations.
Well, and it's not where it needs to get to.
And it's not getting where it needs to get to. At this point, Zelensky needs to get out of Kiev, fall back to Lviv, and continue to carry on the operations from there. And they need to pull back as much of their army as they can, form another line of defense on this back half here, where you have much tighter reinforcements along the Romanian border, the Czech border, and the Polish border. And that's what they need to be able to try to do, because from there they can establish some kind of safety umbrellas and then look to regroup and re-counterattack as best you can. Let the insurgency reign.
I definitely think you're right about at the front end getting pulling out of the east and falling back, and if nothing else, just look at using the Dnieper to as a defensive line. But I can also see how as a commander, and especially as a civilian commander, you would see that as defeatism. You could see that as being something that might breed discontent within your troops. So I think there is a balancing act there.
What happens when you're surrounded?
Well,
you lost 30, 40,000 troops. I mean, you can't get those guys back, and all the equipment that goes along with them.
Sure.
I mean, that's a problem.
I'm certainly not saying it's the right decision, but I can see the factors that go into making it. And actually, there is one place where you and I disagree, and I think that it's my Slavic blood and my Texan upbringing. But I'm sorry, but no, you will turn my city into rubble before you get it. This is
I understand,
this
but
is
do we want it
my
to become
pile of
homes?
rubble. Nobody wants it, but at the
But
same
it's going to
time,
happen, you know. I mean,
that's
do we
right.
want it to turn to Aleppo? Do we want all of the Ukrainian cities to turn to Aleppo and Homs? You
As
know,
yeah, I will say as a Texan, yes, let Dallas burn before we give it over. You can take it
I
down to the
understand the
you can
sentiment.
level it and we will build it up on the Trinity again. But
I know.
and this
Yeah,
is
I mean,
again, it's one of those things where it's like it's probably not tactically the best move, but
but the thing is, it's a leader, though. Even as whether you're a military guy or as a president, you have to think about the well-being of your citizens and your people. You know, you have to think about what are you ultimately leaving behind for them. And if we're going to turn the cities to, to rubble like that, we're not leaving anything for these people. We're unfortunately going to sacrifice these people. I saw, for instance, they were talking about how the Russians are bombing civilian targets and bombing this. Well, here's a reality check. When you put a when you put a PKM in an apartment building and you're
right. Oh yeah.
launching you're launching javelin missiles from the roof of an apartment building that's housing a bunch of people in it, it's not a civilian target anymore. That is a
Sure.
valid military target. You
Absolutely.
are intentionally using civilians as shields. And then you're crying foul when they get killed because the enemy is called in an artillery strike or an airstrike to level the building.
I
And
can
I think that's wrong that the Ukrainians are doing that.
I can accept that, but
Immoral and wrong.
where I draw the line is the current attack on, and I can't remember which nuclear power plant it is, but I mean, they literally are suggesting, and again, this is,
Yeah.
I don't have verification or anything. This is just me reading the internets. But yeah, they're actually shelling the facility, and what could possibly go wrong?
Well, are they shelling like the cooling towers and the actual structure, or are they shelling the forces that are arrayed around it?
Well, or to your point, or are the forces arrayed really close to it, and so you're getting that, or is none of this actually even happening, and it's
Yeah,
just being
this is
reported? So,
propaganda.
but
Yeah.
yeah, that's crazy town to me, and I'm a very very pro nuclear advocate for nuclear
No, me
power,
too.
and even I'm going, let's not do
Let's
not.
not do that. I know. And
No.
part of me is also thinking that, Putin's not an idiot. The guy's not going to try to turn. He wants the place. He doesn't
Mhm.
want the whole thing to ash, and he doesn't want the
Right.
whole thing to nuclear waste. So there's that playing into there as well. And I was listening to several people on Fox News, a few other people talking, and they're talking about how the Russians are using these cluster munitions and thermobaric weapons, and they're like, oh,
Right.
this is a war criminals. I'm like, whoa, whoa,
Yeah.
whoa,
Yeah.
hold up
Hold
here,
on. Yeah.
people. We've been using cluster
That's right.
bombs, thermobaric weapons for 19 years in Iraq and Afghanistan. Now you're saying these are banned weapons and war crimes. Are you
Right.
now implying that the American forces are war criminals and using banned weapons too? Because we use those extensively in those last two wars. Let's keep a little perspective here. They're not using any weapons we haven't used.
And didn't we use a
Didn't we invent the things?
well, didn't we use a thermobaric bomb to collapse a bunker? It was like oh man, I wish I could remember the details on that. It was during
Well,
the Trump
remember, like when
administration.
Trump first took office, one of
Right.
his first things was dropping the Moab, the mother of all bombs. It was a
Right.
30,000-pound thermobaric weapon we dropped on a cave complex in
Exactly.
Afghanistan. It
Right.
was like the largest non-nuclear detonation in history and shook the ground for like 10, 15 kilometers away. So, we've used these types of weapons before. So I think we need to be very cautious with the terms that these are banned weapons or things like that, because we use them all. We've used them, and it's in our inventory to do that.
Right.
But, where do you think this is ultimately going to go? Like, do you think how much longer do you think the Ukrainian army is going to hold out and last? And what do you think is ultimately going to happen in the next 72 hours?
Oh, 72 hours is pretty near term. So that's rough. So basically we're talking about through the weekend. I mean, I think that they will definitely complete the encirclement of Kiev.
I think Kiev will be surrounded by Saturday or Sunday at the latest. Yeah.
I think that okay, so Mariupol is gone, or is it on the verge? Because
Oh yeah,
that's
let's go back to the
definitely
map here.
that's definitely out.
All right, let me get the map just a second here. I gotta take care of something. There we go.
I will say, when it comes to the logistics and the Russian army, that
Oh, that's getting fixed.
I've got a little bit of what do you call it, confirmation bias, because I don't know if you remember this.
Miracles here. Yeah.
When we first started texting about this with the text group, one of my first texts was to never underestimate the ability of the Russian army to trip over its own dick.
Yep.
so I've got some confirmation bias here where
yeah, so with Mariupol, they've surrounded the city. I think I think they're going to surrender, because they're basically saying, look, we're offering you terms to surrender this, declare it an open city, surrender, and just follow the rules and everything goes normal. If you opt to fight and not follow the rules, we're just going to level the place.
Right.
And there was another thing I heard Jennifer Griffin was talking with retired Colonel McGregor about some of this, and I don't necessarily 100% agree with what he was saying, but part of what he was saying was that, one, we have to acknowledge the United States is not going to get military involved in this fight. We're just not. So we need to acknowledge that. And in acknowledging that, we need to ask ourselves, should we be pushing and supporting the Ukrainian army to turn every city into a Stalingrad? Should we be encouraging the Ukrainian army and the Ukrainian people to effectively demolish every one of their cities? And I think that's a good question to ask. And it's a difficult question to answer, because on the one hand, you want to make the Russians pay. But on the other hand, we don't want to create a humanitarian crisis where we have 40 million people who don't have a home because they effectively blew it up. That's a disaster that will cause millions of civilians to die, all in the name of what? Making us in the West feel good. So they fought valiantly, but millions died as a consequence.
Well, I think that I mean, if you take that logic to its extreme, then anytime you're attacked, you should capitulate, because.
But is there an opportunity for them to win?
And that's where it's hard to say. I know that here's where I see it. Here's how I see it. And that is, right now there is a race going on, and the race isn't between the Russian army getting across Ukraine at a given time. It's not like that. The race, to my mind, and it's a very difficult one to predict, is who. Let me rephrase that. Can the Ukrainian army hold out long enough for discontent within the Russian population to cause a change in the regime in Moscow?
But is that going to be something that can happen in like a week or 2 weeks? I mean, that's why I'm saying, that's why you're holding on. That's why you're turning the cities in the east to dust. Because how long do you hold on to? Like, what is the timeline? Is this something we say, well, we're going to hold on and do this for a year?
Yes, that's my position, is that you do that because you're hoping that will be the outcome. And you're absolutely right. It's going to be a humanitarian crisis. Millions will be dislocated. Hundreds of thousands may die.
Is it worth it though?
Because I think it is.
What about the other tactic? So in Iraq, the Iraqis didn't turn every city into Stalingrad. Instead, they took what I think was a very smart approach to it. They accepted the occupation at first, and then they developed an insurgency where they leveraged IEDs and car bombs and made our lives a living hell. So my counter argument is, look, the Russians are going to steamroll in. There's nothing you can do to stop that. But rather than turning your cities to rubble and having effectively nowhere else to live, develop an insurgency, put together IEDs and car bombs, make the Russians' lives hell. Every time they leave a base to go out on a patrol or a vehicle patrol, you hit them with IEDs. You hit them with car bombs from time to time. You hit them with rocket and mortar attacks. You hit them with sniper operations. None of those tactics require you to sacrifice all of your major cities and turning them into rubble. Instead, you're making these guys' convoys really dangerous. You're making their lives in the fob just miserable without having to sacrifice hundreds of thousands of civilians and all these cities turned into rubble.
Well, I have two thoughts on that. The first one is the biggest difference to my mind is that the Iraqis, through hundreds of years of experience, knew that they would outlast us. They knew that we would leave at some point. At some point, we were gonna get out. And I don't know that the same is true in Russia. I don't know if, I mean, literally they're right next door. They have a lot of shared culture. They probably believe that they can outlast whatever insurgency can arise. And then the second part, which was really, really important, has totally escaped my mind. It will come to me in a second, I'm sure. But
I mean, I think with the insurgency side, that's where they can make the most gains, because we're going to be able to provide them with a lot of resources cross-border, and stuff like that. And that's where they could really have a huge impact, because those losses, that's what's going to cause your regime change inside the government, is the losses over 2-3 years of just the insurgency.
Right. And actually that did remind me of my second point, which was, I don't know that an insurgency will prevent cities from being rubbleized. I can see Grozny all over again. If the threat in any given city is too great, that they will just level it, just like Grozny in Chechnya, and let that be a lesson to the rest of you. And then I suppose you have the benefit of that being one city at a time until you give up, and at the end you probably end up with fewer cities completely destroyed. But I don't know. I think we've seen that.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see how it shakes out. And I think one of the interesting things we're going to see in the coming weeks here is Belarus is going to be joining the operations now too. And if Belarus decides they want to come down and cut off this Polish side here, that would be devastating for the Ukrainian effort, because it would cut off all the supplies, it would cut off the refugee flow, and really box them in, and then they kind of are stuck. And another interesting thing is Moldova. I really think that that most likely Belarus and Russia, when they've gotten done with Ukraine, I think this force that's pushing to get Odessa, I think once they've gotten Odessa, I think them and the force, once these guys finish up operations up here, they're going to roll right down and just finish off Moldova and settle that question. Because that's been a bit of an unsettled issue for a very long time, is Moldova and the Transnistria, which Transnistria is right through here.
Right.
And that's been an unsettled problem for, 30 years. So
while you've got the army here, let's go ahead and take care of it.
And it's not a member of the EU, and Moldova is corrupt as hell. So they were never going to get into EU. And that's the big thing about Ukraine. Everyone's all about Ukraine. Well, I'll tell you what, Ukraine was one of the most corrupt governments in countries in Europe.
Yep.
It has been a horribly corrupt, inept government. And the West, by and large, took advantage of that corruption and was just milking it. The US would send in billions in aid, and guess what? Those billions would happen to go to companies that a lot of our politicians have family members on their boards. They get their pockets lined. It's giving access to American corporations to, natural resources we otherwise wouldn't have. I mean, just the corruption and crap that was going on there is just insane.
Yeah, no doubt. And if Ukraine had gotten their business in order, they could have been in the EU
a long time
a
ago.
long time ago.
A
So
long time ago. And they were told this throughout the 2000s. You have to clean up your business. You got to clean up your country. And then they were told again in the 2010s, you got to clean this crap up. And what ultimately led to the situation here was in, 2013, Ukraine was really in a financial strait, like a lot of the other European countries were 2012 and 2013. And when Viktor Yanukovych was the prime minister at the time, he was in the process of securing a very, very large European bailout, and he was quasi pro EU for a while. And what was happening was the ECB, which is largely controlled by the Germans, had said, we'll give you the money to bail you out and put you on the path to EU membership. And once you're in the EU, it's automatic into NATO. But that bailout came with enormous strings, like massive austerity and reform. And mind you, this actually had to happen to clean up Ukraine.
Right.
They didn't want to necessarily go down that road. And that's when Putin came in and said, well, I'll offer you the same bailout without any of those other terms, because he didn't want them going into the EU. So Yanukovych took that because it was a better deal. And as soon as he did that, he went from being pro-Western and pro-EU and US to now he's Moscow and he's Putin's bitch.
Right.
And, that set in motion the powers that be to get rid of him. And we saw all of the fall erupt in domestic problems to get rid of him and foment it. And then lo and behold, he gets overthrown and a magical unicorn poops out this prime minister nobody had heard of, but he's wildly pro-EU and takes over. And now it's, kumbaya and unicorns because Ukraine is like a model government for the EU all of a sudden.
Right.
All it was is a shakedown to get Western, interests and stuff in there. And then we saw Crimea happen. Right. And our government did nothing about it. I mean,
yeah, that's true.
We set this whole thing up, and Putin's he has told us for months this is going to happen. And Biden, the audacity of this guy, knew for 4 months this was going to happen.
Right.
And for 4 months, he didn't bother to send them stingers, munitions, javelins, anything in advance. He waited until like 2 weeks before, and it was too late at that point.
That's a fact. Hey, listen, I gotta wrap this up, but before we do that, I did want to ask. So this is if you go to the website, this is my pet project is babysitting Odessa. So when it comes to Odessa, do you think that they're going to land that naval infantry brigade in that fight, and if so, when do you think they're gonna pull that?
I think they're going to land it, but I don't think they're going to land it in Odessa proper. I think they're either going to land it to the north or they're going to land it to the south of Odessa, where it will likely not encounter stiff resistance, because I don't think they want an actual fight in Odessa. Odessa is the pearl of the Black Sea. They don't want to destroy it. They want it intact. So I think what they're going to do is they're going to land either north or probably south of it, and then let the forces come in from the north, and they'll just encircle it and then hopefully negotiate its surrender without destroying it. I think that'll probably all happen and occur by Sunday. Okay. And it'll either be in Russian hands by Sunday or it'll be in a siege by Sunday. And it's matter how long will it last.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And I think you're absolutely right. We saw today that they were launching those airstrikes south of Odessa.
Yeah.
So
trying to hit down in these areas here.
Yeah, I think that's probably right.
Because they've got the whole place at this point surrounded. And I think we're going to see an enormous amount of movement in the Ukraine front over this weekend. The next 72 hours is going to be a monster. I think this is when we're going to see all the operations really kick off and take place.
All right.
So,
well,
good talks. We'll recap in a few days.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. Well,
we'll recap in a few days, see how things change.
Great talking to you. And yeah, let's do this again soon.
Sounds good. All right, bye.
Thank you.